Welcome to State of the Franchise. I'm your host, Tom Stadler, here with my co-host, not Garth Algar, but Fred Dakin.
Party on, Tom.
Party on, Fred. How you feeling this week?
I'm feeling juiced.
I gotta tell you, I'm excited for this episode because I watched this movie, everything involving this topic for a long time. And of course, if you didn't recognize the intro, our topic this week is Wayne's World.
Ooh, I was hoping you were going to say The Love Guru.
We're going to save that for specifically our Mike Myers episode.
Oh, yeah. Love Guru's coming.
Just do every Austin Powers, too. What? Oh, no. Best Mike Myers movie, though. And I know our guest is going to be very excited to talk about this one, too.
Shrek Forever After.
Not quite. So I Married an Axe Murderer.
Oh.
You ever seen that?
Yeah, I just remember that movie because it has the Spin Doctors in it a lot.
Yes.
Twice. Two Spin Doctor songs.
Yeah. That is a good one. Our guest this week, I'm excited to bring in Peter Intile. Pete, welcome to the show.
Party on, Tom.
Party on, Pete.
Party on, Fred.
Party on, Pete.
Does this guy know how to party or what?
He does.
So, Fred, I got a little secret that I haven't shared with you before. I don't know. Or maybe I did. So Pete and I actually used to do a podcast about a decade ago.
My goodness.
He's a
Fred,
ghost.
do you have feelings?
I've got so many feelings rushing through me right now.
He's a ghost of co-host past. Back when we were Drunken Sailors, was that the one?
Yeah, I'd prefer not to name it because somebody, a future employer, might go find it.
They're like, what's this WordPress podcast?
Find it and give you a promotion.
Perhaps.
I'm going to step down. You need to have my job.
Those were the early days. We discussed sports, which I thought was rather entertaining because when you brought this podcast forward 10 years later, you were like, hey, Pete, let's talk sports.
Right.
And I said, nah.
Thank God.
You're welcome.
Yeah, sports have been a tricky topic to get off the ground. I've been lobbying little by little, but we got our one. We got our one so far. And maybe some more coming down the line.
For sure. We just needed to have a few more episodes where I knew what the hell we were talking about. Because we had like that space where I was just like the passenger, I feel like, Survivor. And I love those episodes, but I was like, no, I want some episodes where I sound like I know what I'm talking about.
Speaking of knowing what they're talking about, so Pete, bringing you in as our subject matter expert here on Wayne's World, maybe talk a little bit or tell us all about your history with the franchise itself, from whether you watch the show or and so forth in the movies.
Yeah, I mean, when you asked me to come on here and speak about sports, I quickly pivoted and said, let's talk about Wayne's World. And, Wayne's World is one of those things that's funny because as I was researching for the pod, I was thinking about my history with it. And I don't really know where it started. But I suspect it was one of those instances, and I'm sure Fred, Tom, both of you guys have movies like this where your parents probably let you watch a movie way too early.
Yep.
Way too early in your life. And it definitely caused some sort of scarring. And it sticks with you. So I think that was my experience with Wayne's World, which is, I really was introduced to it at a very young age, and it stuck with me, and it instantly became one of those movies that you toss the remote if it's on. And the best part about Wayne's World and having that type of ingrained movie in your lifestyle is that it's also one of those that always shows up on like TBS and TNT, and this is like constantly on TV, so you get to watch it over and over again
All the time, 100%. We actually had it on VHS, the first one. And nice. I remember having that sleeve. It might have been like remember when McDonald's sold all those like videotapes? Like they had like the Indiana Jones trilogy and all that. I think we might have gotten it there, but I'm not actually sure. Oh. But that was always how I watched it. Although TBS and TNT or whatever else, some Turner product had it all the time.
We're dating ourselves.
I know. People are like, what is a VHS tape?
They hardly know what Indiana Jones is.
Well, Indiana Jones 5 is on the way. I don't know.
Which I'm sure will be a heater.
Was that Uncharted sequel that's coming?
So I had this conversation at work. It was like, they're like, what? Indiana Jones is coming back? They're like, do people even remember that? Like, why don't they just reboot it? I go, they did. It's called Uncharted. Like, it's not that good. I don't know. Did anyone see it?
I didn't see it. No.
No.
Uncharted? No.
No. I hear Spider-Man's in it though.
Yeah, for sure.
And Marky Mark.
Marky Mark.
Yeah, Mark Wahlberg as the cigar chomping grizzled, elder who knows all. Like,
Seems appropriate.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, to Tom Holland, he probably is.
He's like, I remember you from those old movies. I'm talking to like he's still like Spider-Man. They smell like this all the time, right? I can't do a British accent. Fred, what's your exposure though to Wayne's World?
Yeah, I was gonna say that I'm a little bit younger than you guys, just by like a year or two, and I had a pretty strict household in the beginning, and eventually the floodgates had to open because I was such like a movie person. It had to happen, but I have like the order in which I got into Mike Myers was the first thing I saw was Austin Powers 2. And I remember it was just my dad and I, and my mom was out of town, my brother was at a sleepover. I rented that. He grabbed some like action movie, like a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. Yeah. Someone will never talk about on this podcast. And I remember I loved it so much that I watched it upstairs, and when it was over, I rewound it and restarted it, and he came up, and I was like, oh, it's still going. And he was like, there's no way that movie is still going. Go to bed. And then eventually I did see Wayne's World, and it just kind of was that I was young enough yet old enough where I'm like, oh, this is the same person who I like doing a similar thing but completely different. You know what I'm saying? It was the first time I was kind of drawing parallels of the actor behind the movie versus like, oh, this is just the thing I watch that's good.
Yeah. No, and I think that's kind of how, it seems like, we all kind of stumbled into it, right? Is sort of where it comes from. Now, even go back to you, Pete. Did you watch any like the sketches on SNL? Did you ever see that like live or in repeats?
Yeah, no. Really? I mean, the honest answer is no. I was introduced to the movie, quickly picked up Wayne's World 2, but I've never been a huge SNL guy. So, I appreciate it when it's on. I watch plenty of, you can speak to this. We watch plenty of clips. Yeah. But, and I watch almost all the movies, but, that come out of it. But yeah, I never went back and watched those. But I will tell you, I was incredibly, after growing up with Wayne's World, when they brought back those one-of commercials, I needed that. I needed that in my life as quickly as possible. And I mean, we won't talk about the quality, but like nonetheless, I was happy to see that. So no, I never really watched the clips. They're fun to watch now, though.
They are. It's funny to see where the seeds for even the movies came from some of those clips. We were just watching something even before we started recording here too, where they have Aerosmith on, and it's just like, oh, so that's kind of where that idea probably generated before they even did number 2, but.
I think what's fun about the clips is that the movies don't really feature the show Wayne's World at all, right? But the clips, if you want that show feeling, you're going to watch the clips. And, that's exactly what we were watching, and you can see that. And I think it's also entertaining in the clip that we watched from SNL that Wayne's mom shows up.
Yeah.
And Wayne's parents are nowhere to be found in either movie.
And neither Garth's either. Like, they really are just like they're like Beavis and Butthead, right? They don't have like parents, and obviously very spiritual, kind of almost brothers in that regard because they were on them around the same time. So,
is there like for you guys any sort of special connection? I know there's the Wisconsin-Illinois beef, but was there like a little bit of Midwest pride like watching these? Like, did you like connect like, oh, Illinois, that's not that far away. Aurora is not that far away. They go to Milwaukee in the first movie. We'll get into later.
Actually, I was going to defer to you, Tom, but no. The answer is no. I think my reaction, because I grew up on the West Coast, my reaction was, where the fuck is Milwaukee? Right. And to be perfectly honest, up until I was 18, I didn't really know where Wisconsin was.
Same. I grew up in a small town.
So no sense of pride. But damn, I thought Wayne and Garth were cool.
Yeah.
And I don't know why I thought they were cool, but man, they were cool.
Yeah, definitely they were like cool, which is not the Reed you have now. You love them now, I think, but they are definitely not cool.
No, I mean, they do kind of look like stunted, like man-childs, right? Like, or man-children?
Oh, for
What's the
sure.
appropriate name then?
Like Garth has he has the vibes of like a small child. Like he gets like these little jerks and giddy moves, like how a kid gets when he gets excited. Like if you watch Garth get excited, he's like moving his little arms around.
Yeah, which does kind of make sense because, I mean, they're supposed to be 16, 17, 18, something like that?
Oh, wow. I never really thought of it. To me, I'm like, they're adults,
But that's the context you get from the show, though, from SNL. Is that like, oh, here, these are two kids in their basement, and it's funny because it's two grown-ass men just playing them.
I did get excited in the beginning. There's like they're going through the channels of the first one, and there's like a weather report, and you see Waukegan, and I like turned into the Leonardo DiCaprio meme for a second. I was like, I know Waukegan. That's where I go to avoid the tolls, and my girlfriend argues, just go straight through, pay the tolls.
That's a free pro tip for the listeners.
Oh yeah.
Anybody who lives in the Midwest or even in the southeastern Wisconsin, northern Illinois area. Which, to answer your question then, Fred, so when I was a kid, I didn't even connect how close Aurora, Illinois was to Wisconsin. Like, I knew Illinois was south, but I didn't know, it didn't make sense. I just got pumped when they went to Milwaukee and they did the Laverne and Shirley because my sister and I used to watch it on like Nick at Night. So we were like, that's the thing. And I don't know if anybody now, especially younger people, do they even get that reference?
I didn't get the reference, and I still don't. I know it's from Laverne and Shirley, and I've now seen the clips, but no. And even some of those like shots of Milwaukee, I'm like looking, I'm like, what's that? I can't really tell.
Yeah, I didn't pick any of that up, but the one thing that does stick with me about the Milwaukee reference is remembering that it's Algonquin for the good land.
Yeah.
For sure.
Thank you, Alice Cooper.
That part is so pure. I love it. And he's so into it too. He's such a, like, that's just the performer in Alice Cooper, I feel like, able to even take that. You compare him to like Steven Tyler in the second one, right? And it's like, this was a better cameo, I think.
Were these movies on Paramount Plus?
They were.
Fuck.
One of them.
Oh, one of them.
See,
Okay.
Tom must have caught the discount era on this where he got both.
Yeah.
I only had Wayne's World 2 on Paramount Plus.
Okay, good. Because I ended up renting both, but then when I went to rent the second one, they were like, or you could just get Paramount Plus. And I was like, I would have done that.
So I think what happened was, and I actually read about this in this article that just came out like today about the director of the first Wayne's World, and she was saying that she had just watched it again on Paramount Plus. So I'm like, so I wasn't lying. That's where I watched it because they put it in 4K. She was like, this is beautiful to see it. Like this clean version. And it really did look good. Like I was like, oh, wow, this is pretty crisp. But you just assume everything's getting upgraded to HD ever since Lucas did all his shit with Star Wars.
I really need to see Wayne and Garth in 4K.
There's definitely a moment. It's like when Garth does the haiku that the resolution's so good that you see Wayne's like beard coming in and it looks really weird. His like makeup looks patchy, and I was like, ooh.
You know, I'm sure that 4K also brings out the just tremendous amount of jokes of bad props and right. stage atmosphere that they kept in the movie. So, for example, in Wayne's World 2, when they're flying to England, right? You know, you could really see that plane bounce.
Gosh, that is too funny, too. And it finally occurred to me, I don't know why I didn't pick up on this before, but when they land in England in the second one, like Garth is significantly shorter than Wayne. Like they picked a specifically short actor, and I was like, what, why? I think I was always so caught up in like looking at the scenery in the background. Like, how did they not notice that there's this drastic height difference between the two?
Yeah, I didn't even know like that the bit was this is obviously like footage that they like ordered for like and had people like shot from the back. Like to me, I was like, oh, okay, they went to England.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, and maybe that's even another question here, too, because I feel like some of these movies do kind of age a little bit better, where you do sort of get the older humor in it. Do you feel like that's a reason that you revisit it a lot? Or do you feel like that's something that you just sort of discover as you're like, oh, it's on again on TBS. Oh, wow, this actually does still kind of hit for me.
Yeah, so I think, having watched this as a kid, watched both movies as a kid plenty of times, you think it's funny because Wayne and Garth are just ridiculous. They seem cool for one, so you kind of look up to them as a younger kid, and they just seem ridiculous. And the quotes, I think this is obviously one of the most quotable series of movies that you could run across, and it's perhaps 100%. Because the quotes are so simple, but they're also funny, right? Like if I'm 6 and somebody tells me, well, monkeys might fly out of your butt, I'm gonna laugh my ass off. Like sure. Literal monkeys might come out of my butt. But what's really funny about it is I'm almost getting, as I'm getting older, a little wiser. That was a quote. Is that I'm getting that kind of Forrest Gump kind of feel to the movies where there were obvious points of humor that I would not get as a kid.
Yeah.
And there was even an instance where I watched it right before this podcast, and I was like, I totally forgot about that, and I don't think I've ever caught that clip of humor in the movie before. And it just constantly surprises me, and I pick it up as I get older. So I feel like the movies are aging well with me.
Yeah.
Well, these age, the second one is a little rougher, but the first one gets out pretty clean. I think the only thing that's a little weird is like the crazy ex-girlfriend stuff's maybe doesn't age that well.
Yeah.
But overall, the first one, compared to so many movies, like just ages so much better. Ages better than The Hangover that came out in like 2008 or 9.
Yeah, they don't go for a lot of the low-hanging fruit, and I think that's why it works. And I mean, maybe that's a credit to just kind of the humor that Mike Myers and Dana Carvey and all the writers put together. But it does feel like they like to challenge the viewer with something a little bit. I mean, it's still, you get your monkeys will fly on my butt, but it's like there's clearly something they're kind of making fun of with like the kids of the day, right? Like like this is how kids talk. Why do they talk like this?
And these are also characters in any other comedy that would be making gay jokes to each other, like, and belittling, like, and I don't think there's any of that in either of them. Which, yeah, the rocker guys were definitely like that kind of humor, like you watch Detroit Rock City, like, or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, even the gay joke in the second one doesn't feel like a slight at, homosexuals at all. It's like, okay, we're in a club where, they're going to put on YMCA, and it's like, well, yeah, it makes sense. Right. I don't know. The gag still plays pretty well, I feel like, with them in the village people garb.
And then just, the Native American guy, like, blends in up there, and he's just like, yeah. I did a double take. I forgot that's not podcast.
No, that's okay. What you guys missed was Fred doing a visual double take. I think just to kind of even dive into, the history here a little bit to talk about it. I mean, first and foremost, anybody who's not familiar with Wayne's World, and I feel like it's pretty well renowned, otherwise we wouldn't be talking about it here. It's about two guys who are like rockers. You mentioned they're like 18 years old, potentially, maybe a little bit older than.
See, I like to picture them. I like to picture my Wayne and my Garth as like 24, 25.
And I'm right in the middle. I'd say like 20, 21.
Yeah.
I like to picture Washout.
I mean, yeah, they are. They're like, they're somewhere hovering around college age, right? Like, I think that's fair.
Think of all those hairnets and magnets he has. You can't accrue those by the age of 16.
Mm-hmm. Nothing he'd call a career.
A couple Joe jobs.
I wonder if you hit pause, one of them are like a Jewel Osco or something like that.
I mean, they were old enough to own a Pacer.
Wait.
The Mirthmobile.
Oh, yeah.
Which I hope I caught this on the rewatch. I hope you, for the listeners, your host or your co-host Tom is probably the largest Batman fan I think I've ever met. When the Mirthmobile first shows up, the Batman theme plays.
It's true. I did catch that. And they also have the Batman sequence in the second one when they're going down the pole and they hit the William Shakespeare button.
Oh, do they do homages to movies in the second one?
Yeah. They do a couple. I do want to get into that at some point. Because
you're going to do the background. I just have one question. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole because it could be a potential episode, but I do want to know this before we go in. Are you guys more Wayne's World guys or Austin Powers guys?
I'd have to say Wayne's World guy. But man, do I respect Austin Powers.
I feel like in comparison, as we're just talking about the comedy aging, I think Wayne's World definitely still sits much better with me. Austin Powers feels like it gets a little more childish the older you get, but I mean, how can you not have nostalgia for Austin Powers though, too?
But don't discount Shrek.
Oh, no. Like, I was 11 when Shrek came out, so it was perfect because I'm like the age where, like, it's not like any other kid movie, you know? They, like, swear and fart. It's great. There's Smash Mouth in the album or the soundtrack. Come on.
Yeah, for the younger listener, the voice of Shrek plays Wayne.
They're like, what?
They're like, we know Shrek, I think.
Yeah, Shrek, that's from that one meme, right? Like, Shrek is love.
Whoa. This is a PG podcast. Right?
It's about PG-13. We're a little higher than PG.
Yeah, I get weird sometimes.
It's just a tad.
I would just say that I'm probably more Austin Powers, but just because I got to ride the wave of it,
yeah.
I saw Goldmember in theaters, and that it will be one of the best theater experiences in my life. I had all the pieces together, I felt.
Yeah.
Let's come back to Austin Powers at the end because there's an interesting tie-in to Wayne's World.
Oh, sweet. Definitely want to hear that. But yeah, I mean, to even go back, this is pre-Shrek, back in the days when Dana Carvey and Mike Myers are on SNL, they developed these characters, right? And actually, the character of Garth, so it was funny you brought that up earlier, is that it's like childish because it's based on Dana Carvey's younger brother. The only reason I found this out is because I watched his audition tape a couple years ago, and he does a character in his audition he's like, this is my brother, and he's like acting very like kind of like nerdy and kiddie. He's like, I like to put things together and do it, and then I like to watch things blow up. And it's just this funny like little thing that he does, and I'm like, so this literally he had the nugget for Garth and was just like, he pitched probably Myers on it like, I can be your sidekick, I'll be this kind of weird eccentric like high schooler or whatever he is, or whatever you want to call him, college age. And they started doing this probably around late 80s, and the first one was 87, 88. The first sketch that they did on SNL, and they would have a guest on every time, very similar to this podcast.
I was born in 87.
I was as well.
Meant to be.
I wasn't.
Fred was still a twinkle in his papa's eye.
For sure.
What I was surprised to read in my research here was that the character of Wayne actually was developed before SNL, though. It was on a Canadian TV show called Wayne's Power Minute. Or it was on, it's a show called It's Only Rock and Roll, but that was the sketch name, was Wayne's Power Minute, and then it developed in Wayne's World when Myers got cast on SNL.
And he never changed the accent.
No.
That's the one thing when I was watching these, I was like, I've lived in the Midwest long enough. That's just a straight up Canadian. Like Wayne is straight up like a boot. Like
it does kick it even more in 2. I feel like he has the Canadian accent.
He doesn't give a shit at that point.
No, not at all. But I mean, the sketch was such a smash hit that obviously they made the movie in 1992. It's directed by Penelope Spheris, who also directed Black Sheep with Chris Farley. Did you guys see that?
Yes. Which there's kind of just like that's an interesting cross section considering I believe that the writers of the Wayne's World, like it's the 2 Turners, wrote Tommy Boy.
Really?
Which I feel when I watch these, when I watch Wayne's World to me is a lot closer to Tommy Boy than it is Austin Powers.
For sure.
I think that's the power of the Turners. I didn't look it up, but they might be like a husband-wife or used to be.
Yeah.
But they're the 2 writers that write with Mike Myers, who probably just bring so much to the page because I'm going to throw out, remember how I was like, I have a hot take. You better preheat the oven.
Oh, boy.
And I was like, going to say, Wayne's World's pretty great, but it kind of is just a bunch of sketches tied together. And that's you could say that, but I had it wrong. That's Austin Powers.
Yes.
You rewatch Austin Powers, it is literally a bunch of sketches tied together. Wayne's World is a bunch of sketches tied together, but there's a really good plot. There's a good romance, and there's a good friendship.
Yeah.
So that take was cold. It was dead on arrival, but it can be put towards later use for Austin Powers.
Just pocketed for now. Come back to it. Yeah, but that's definitely something worth considering too, because I do kind of feel like even the second one kind of puts the plot to this. I mean, there's the plot of him putting on Wayne stock, right? And I mean, even just getting on, it's like, the sequel tried to pick up on the success of the first one. I think there's some good gags, but there's definitely some strange things. And it was interesting to read that article earlier today with the director, because she wasn't invited to come back to the second one because she had differences with Mike Myers, and not saying like, oh yeah, he completely railroaded her. I think he was sort of like, this is what I want, my vision for the first one, and her not acquiescing to that basically led him to like, well, we're going to replace you. And Lauren was like, all right, well, we'll see you later.
Yeah, I feel like the second one definitely feels like Mike Myers had a little more power and like wanted a few more like of that spoofy stuff.
Yeah, it's like the former part of Seinfeld versus the later seasons,
for
right?
sure.
I think the other thing to keep in mind too, and this surprised me when I looked it up, was that the first movie came out in 92. Mm-hmm. The second movie came out in 93.
Quick turnaround.
Within a year.
Yeah.
Which for movies these days is nuts, right? I mean, they went straight from, post-production on the first movie right into pre-production for the second movie. And better yet, they actually had to like completely can the first plot.
Yeah.
Because Mike Myers ripped off another plot.
Wait, what's this?
So it turns out that Mike Myers had this original idea for Wayne's World 2 that was going to be Wayne and Garth starting their own country. And I'm not making this up. And it turns out that the plot that they were going to use was based off of another story at the time or another movie, and it was completely copyrighted. And Mike just didn't tell anyone, and they found out, and they completely rewrote the movie.
Wow.
And just destroyed the set and had to redo it. But they still released that movie within a year. So you could easily see, I agree with you guys, like Wayne's World 1 for sure had a plot. Had a very nice plot. It all tied together really well. It definitely goes off the rails, ironically, I think, like right about when Chris Farley is introduced.
Yeah.
Is like right when it goes off the rails.
Just a bit, yeah.
And then it stays off the rails through Wayne's World 2.
Yeah. It does kind of lose the plot a little bit because, yeah, it starts like, it's a pretty unique idea because, right, the whole show or the sketch is all about them having their own little like home hosted TV show, in their basement, public access TV. And it's kind of unique to think like, oh, what if somebody did buy that and tried to make that bigger? And that kind of feels like a couple of the things that were even happening at the time. Like, I don't know if you guys watch Mystery Science Theater. That actually made me think a lot about that. It had a very similar progression where it was like a little public access TV show that got purchased by, it might have been Sci-Fi or somebody else at that time, brought in, but then they started like replacing some of the actors, they started replacing some of the writers, and some of the guys got some different control on it. And the Mystery Science Theater is obviously still beloved and people love it still, but it was apparently very different in its earliest days compared to what it ended up being by the time it hit like TV.
It's something that's happening, I think is going to happen even more now because you have independent creators like YouTubers, Twitchers, and I feel so many executives and people are trying to get their fingers on those people and try to turn them into a broader content, you know? And I think so. I was thinking about like how we live in an age where there's a lot of versions of these Wayne Garths who aren't self-aware but are entertaining, and have fans in small bases, and like I think I love how that's happening today, and it's even broader. Like people watch so much Twitch nowadays.
Yeah, I mean, right? Like if Wayne's World were made today, if somebody wanted to make that sketch or make the movie, like it would be 100% a YouTube show, right? Or a Twitch show.
Definitely.
Yeah, I mean, no question about it. But yeah, then as your point, Pete, like it goes off the rails once Farley comes in, because then all of a sudden we're chasing false endings and we're chasing like this whole plot where, I mean, even in the second one, as soon as they have the dream with Jim Morrison, it's sort of like,
it's funny though, because in the first movie they know they're gonna go off the rails because they introduce Old Man Withers right at the beginning of the movie.
Yeah.
Like he's just like and here's Old Man Withers. And then they just move on. And then he comes back for the Scooby-Doo ending. But yeah, that entire second movie was just I don't know about you guys. I was going to say it's fully off the rails, but I don't know about you guys, but my opinion is I actually think I like Wayne's World 2 better.
That is a hot take.
Ooh, that's so hot. Ow.
And I don't know why.
Can you get some cream in here?
Yeah. You know, so for as cool of a take as Fred had, you know, a couple minutes ago, you know, going back to my experience with Wayne's World 1, I think I was super young when I watched it for some reason. Like looking back at doing the math in my head, I might have been like 6, which was way too young. But when Wayne's World 2, when I first ran into that, I think I was a little older, a little wiser. Second time using that quote.
Yeah,
and there's other ones too to use. But that specific movie, I just fell in love with because it was just so slapstick. It was like you said, it was a bunch of sketches tied together. I connected with all that. The fighting scene with Cassandra's dad, the Charlton Heston moment at the end. Like I loved it all.
Yeah,
I just loved it all.
Well, let's get into the highlights because I think this is a good chance to really dive into these movies a little deeper. I mean, we're already kind of on the doorstep of doing that. We've already been talking about certain moments, but certainly, I mean, you look at the way that they put the gags together. I wouldn't rank the second one better, but there's definitely some stuff in there that I still laugh at a lot. I mean, gosh, the entire like segment where they go and visit Del Preston, that guy is the most ridiculous character I could think of.
You know what's funny about Del Preston is thinking about current events.
Yeah.
As for the listeners, I think we've established we are in the great state of Wisconsin, and we just got done with a football season where our quarterback may have been a nut bar. And when Aaron, you wanted a sports podcast, so here you go.
Yeah, here we go.
Who wanted this?
When Aaron Rodgers started just going off the rails, I instantly started thinking, man, he reminds me a lot of Del Preston. Like the scene where they introduce Del, like when you first see him, right? He's hanging upside down sleeping because he learned that it would extend his life, right? From Keith Richards.
Who cannot be killed by conventional weapons.
He said Driver wouldn't go on the field unless he brought him 3 Big Macs with no cheese. So he popped around the corner of Lambeau, grabbed a few Big Macs. That's my favorite bit. He keeps telling the story over and over again. They're all like, okay, yeah, we know.
Low-key, the best part, I think that I caught this last time, was just Farley coming in, hearing the story for the third time, and he is just like all the way in. Like his eyes are so intense. That was probably one of my favorite parts of the second one too, though, is that they gave Farley a more prominent role, and it was better for
Milton.
that. Yeah.
Just a great name for a Farley character.
For sure.
Milton.
So did they introduce him though as Phil at first in the second one and then change his name? I felt like I heard this and maybe I heard it wrong.
No, I'm going to go with you heard it wrong.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure he was Milton, but of course, we can't discount Phil in the first movie.
Just great handwork.
If you're going to spew into this.
Yeah.
Oh, God, the little cup.
It's just so funny. Phil's so funny because he's just blasted that entire movie.
Yeah.
Like, he goes from, like, incredibly drunk to completely sober, forgetting about everything, and then the next time you see him, he's incredibly drunk again.
Yeah.
And it's so entertaining to see.
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, part of the Bohemian Rhapsody scene, which is just still iconic.
Just being able to, like, yeah, we're gonna have a moment where we're gonna have a popular song and we're gonna sing along, and everyone's gonna love it. Like,
I mean, what a pull though too, because that was probably maybe almost a decade after Bohemian Rhapsody actually came out. Not the movie, we're talking about the song.
Right, and I feel like early 90s was that last time where you could have big songs in movies and in TV shows. Because I know, like, Freaks and Geeks, I guess that's a little bit later, but Freaks and Geeks was when it aired, it had all this great music, and then they ran into trouble because, like, it just got way too expensive.
I do appreciate how I respect that as I have gotten older and rewatched these. Is that the movies do have a heavy emphasis on music, and the music definitely it carries. It's a huge theme throughout the entire movie. Wayne wants a guitar. They obviously, I don't know if Garth actually can play drums, but I mean he does in that one scene, right?
Yeah.
But, like so I guess he can. But nonetheless, it reminds me a lot of like what James Gunn does currently in his movies and his TV shows, and making sure that you just have this excellent soundtrack that's going to help carry the movie along.
Right, adding some like really good needle drops, right? Yeah, it's kind of his thing. Like Edgar Wright does a lot of that too. Listen to the Edgar Wright podcast if you want to learn more about Edgar Wright. That's kind of like been their thing, is that they're becoming very notorious now for doing that, where it's like you're gonna have these like really epic needle drops that like these awesome sequences, and you get this great action that goes with it too. I mean, we were talking about Peacemaker earlier before we started recording. Like that whole opening sequence where they're doing the dance just really kind of gets you like ready for the show. Like you're just like, I'm in.
Well, like Wayne's World 1 especially has like a really good blend of like some classic rock, but you tell they're like classic rock metal guys, like hard rock. And then there's like Peppers on there and Temple of Dog at one point. So it's like a really 90s soundtrack too.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because Cassandra's band like does so many covers too. Like she's doing like a lot of like rock covers from 60s, 70s, and there's just a lot of tributes to the old like rock and roll era that is almost darn near dead by that point in 1992.
Yeah, and shout out, as we're talking about music, shout out to Tia Carrera for doing her own vocals on all of that. Just incredible. I mean, when I was younger, I really had hoped like Crucial Taunt was like an actual band. Right? Like I wanted to list. I didn't want the shitty Beatles to be an actual band, but Crucial Taunt was amazing, and come to find out that she ran her own vocals and is a singer and has, I think, won awards. Is quite impressive. She also, small shout out, maybe this is a future podcast episode, but she also played an antagonist in one of my other favorite movies, True Lies.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I could see like a Cameron cast. I was gonna say, she's great. I was wondering if she is the best straight, for lack of a better term, straight man actor next to Mike Myers in any of his movies. I think she plays I believe that they're in a relationship, and she's very good at being a real person in beats of comedy.
Yeah. No, that's absolutely true. I think that's probably fair. I mean, no offense to Elizabeth Hurley or Heather Graham or Beyonce. They kind of feel like they get sucked into his bullshit a little bit, right?
Right. And she's very much like, I don't know, the way the character works, because she's kind of into him and sees him as a nerdy guy. Like, she reads him as nerdy, and it works really well. She's into it. She also has a Pet Cemetery poster, which is super cool.
Yeah.
And she's the older sister in Lilo and Stitch, and that character that has a big soft spot for me because I was brought up by nannies, like older nannies.
Yeah.
So when I saw that movie, I was like, yeah, it reminds me of all my nannies.
I wonder if that's because we were talking about the as we were doing the research, we were talking about the two antagonists, if you will, of the two movies, Rob Lowe and Christopher Walken.
Yeah.
And Christopher Walken, I was surprised rewatching number 2. This is one of his most grounded roles. I think. And I wonder, you're bringing up how Tia Carrere was probably the best, sidekick to Mike Myers, and Wayne might be one of his most grounded roles too, outside of the character he plays in So I Married an Axe Murderer.
Yeah, but even then, he's kind of extra, right? Like he's like mooing and stuff in the butcher shop. But yeah,
Haggis.
maybe.
I don't know. The Love Guru is just such a great role that
Very
I
grounded.
couldn't even finish.
Very grounded.
very
I learned a
grounded
lot
role.
from that movie too.
That movie
None of it worked.
Does have one good joke where like I know in the Guru they do the Namaste. He says Mariska Hargitay.
That's not even that funny. It's just stupid.
You laughed though. It got you. If that's the best joke in your movie though, you're in trouble.
No, for sure. But no, I think I would agree with you though too. And I don't know what it is about what Rob Lowe is doing in the first one and what Christopher Walken is doing in the second one that it just Rob Lowe's thing works a lot better. I feel like in the first one.
Rob Lowe is pitch perfect in the first one. Like it's amazing. I think.
Yeah, he's almost kind of shades of Chris Traeger if he just went full douchebag, right?
For sure. I feel like this could have been Chris Traeger like while he was still doing drugs and drinking. Like if like in the 80s, like he's like bad influence, Rob Lowe. But then like because that's how Rob Lowe kind of is in real life. He's been sober for a while and now he's kind of one of those guys who chases the high of life. Have you guys seen Rob Lowe's paranormal reality show?
No.
It ran for one season, 2017. I have seen a couple episodes. It's him and his two very handsome sons going to paranormal locations and trying to, hear things. And I would say it's pretty much like him as Chris Traeger meets a Goofy movie because it's like the two sons are not into it. And he's just like, ghosts are like my favorite thing. I love things that are scary. Like he's just getting so into it. Like, kids, isn't this great? And they're like, no, Dad, this sucks.
Outside of him just playing a great bit, there's so many great cameos in these movies, though, too. Like, I know the one that I caught this last time, and I cannot believe I've never seen it before. Bob Odenkirk is one of, like, the nerds that runs up to him.
It's like him and Robert Smigel.
Yeah.
So they're, like, writers at the time for SNL, so that's great.
It's like, yeah, it has to be one of, maybe not Odenkirk's first, like, roles, but maybe close to. Probably pre Mr. Show, right?
Isn't Mr. Show like early 2000s, late 90s?
Ooh, I'll look it up.
But I know like Robert Smigel, he does like the ambiguously gay duo cartoons and a lot of writing for SNL. So I recognize Bob Odenkirk, and then I was like, the other guy is probably Robert Smigel.
Yeah. Yeah, Mr. Show is 2 years after this, or after the second one. So it's 1995.
That's earlier than I would have thought.
That is. They picked up on a lot of stuff.
I never noticed Meatloaf in it, and that was very timely because he doesn't do much in it. Oh, you're saying you don't recognize him?
No,
who is Meatloaf?
Tom is completely just blown away.
Wait,
by this.
what?
I've been waiting for this.
Wait,
I just Fred. I peeked I saw in giant caps lock on your notes Meatloaf, and I was waiting because I also knew this. I was waiting for Tom not to know this, so I'm really glad that he didn't. He is the bouncer at Gasworks at the beginning.
Shut up! That's him.
Right after the yeah. Crucial taunt. Shitty Beatles.
Oh,
Shitty Beatles. How are they? They suck.
It never clicked with me that it was him.
It's because when you see Meatloaf in your movie, you're used to him having huge breasts.
Yeah. Yeah, Fight Club. Oh my God, that's crazy. I've looked at that guy. I've watched that scene how many times? I've just assumed that's just some random actor they got. Like, whatever. He looks, I mean, he does.
It was a random actor.
But I think that goes to show Meatloaf, say what you will, R.I.P., pretty good actor.
I mean,
Fooled Tom.
Fooled me. For sure. I mean, and he, he doesn't look that different from his character in like Rocky Horror or anything either. So now that I'm like, holy crap, that's I feel like I've just been duping myself this whole time.
So two cameos I guess I forgot about. Mm-hmm. One I just didn't even pick up on. The other one I just forgot about. Both in Wayne's World 2.
Okay.
Drew Barrymore.
Yep.
As the receptionist at WPIG Aurora for Handsome Dan.
Mm-hmm.
The attractive Swedish female that definitely wants to get with Wayne because Wayne knows the average rainfall in Sweden.
Yep, and because Mike Myers had a lot more power on this movie.
Yeah.
The other one was Tim Meadows.
Yeah, Sammy Davis Jr.
Yes.
Yeah, I did pick up on that this last time too. That
Just shooting the shit with Jim Morrison in the desert.
It's very interesting just to see. Yeah, like he was probably also early in his SNL career at that point. So they were grabbing probably a few people on there. I'm trying to think if anybody else from SNL was in that.
I mean, other than Farley.
Yeah, but I mean Farley was already in the first one too. So
I do have they're not quite cameos, but MVPs for the movie. The two that I would say would be Kurt Fuller and Ed O'Neill.
Oh yeah,
both of them are just perfect.
Fuller, that's Point Break guy.
That's the I love you, man.
Yeah.
He's like, thank you.
Yeah, he's a great character in Point Break. Or he's like, he's like Swayze's right hand man at the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
Ed O'Neill was nuts.
Ed O'Neill is
Glenn.
Always my favorite part of these movies.
Makita's Donuts.
It's just so great that Ed O'Neill had this reputation in TV as a certain type of character, kind of like a close to the edge angry guy, and then he can bring it to Modern Family and win Emmys by bringing pathos and old man energy.
Yeah.
Because he just adds he just took Married with Children and even this movie to some regard and just added a layer of reality and sadness, and now he is one of the best TV actors I think working.
Yeah.
Ed O'Neill was fantastic. I think him and Del were definitely the most adventurous characters in the entire series of movies.
100%.
Fun fact about Del: the actor that plays Del was also one of the pilots of the royal ship that carries Padme Amidala in episode 1.
Man.
He's also in Whitnell and I, which I haven't seen since my early college days, but I know he's in that because he's a well-renowned English actor. While you're looking at that, I am going to say I was wondering if Del being named Del was anything to do with Del Close being, the big improv guy, because that was one of Mike Myers' mentor. In this movie, he plays a mentor role.
That seems like it could track. I didn't read anything about that in my research, but I could probably believe it if you told me that was true.
And Mike Myers was supposed to play Del Close in a movie. I think last I looked before this podcast is not happening, but that was going to be a thing.
That would have been pretty good.
So it turns out I read about this. The character of Del was played by Tom's looking it up. I'm drawing a blank on the name. But this actor had played another character in a previous movie or piece of art in some way, shape, or form. I don't know if it was a play or a movie. And in the rewrite of Wayne's World 2, which I had mentioned, they had to completely can the first right and went with the second one. They brought this character in, and they actually had this idea of him essentially reprising his character from this previous piece of work, but being older. And being kind of nuts. So I think they based it off of one of the actor's previous efforts. But
Really?
I wonder if it's Whitnell and I, because I just remember that movie is a bunch of like
that sounds right.
drunk English people smoking cigarettes.
That sounds right. That sounds right. I think that is what it was.
That could be good. Or that could be the right one. He's also in Alien 3. I've never actually seen Alien 3, and I feel a little embarrassed admitting that, but...
Speaking of alien movies, so one of my favorite scenes is when Stacy, they're at McHugh's Donuts, and Stacy shows up and brings the gun rack. A gun rack? A gun rack. I don't even own a gun, let alone many guns, to necessitate an entire rack. What am I going to do with a gun rack? True story, I almost brought you guys gun racks.
Oh my gosh.
But when I was looking her up, because when I saw her again, for some reason, like just by looks, she reminded me a lot of the actress that plays the daughter in Father of the Bride.
Oh, sure. Okay.
And I was wrong.
No, yeah, it's not her.
Laura Flynn Boyle.
Yep.
Instead plays the bad guy in Men in Black.
The second one? That would be her, right? You're right.
The second one, okay.
So, yeah, she's like the crazy one with like the
Because I
long
didn't see her
tendrils.
asking for sugar water.
No,
No, she wasn't asking for sugar water.
So, yeah, Laura Flynn Boyle. Now, for other listeners and other people out there, probably know her potentially from Twin Peaks as Laura's best friend, Donna. And in that show, you actually can kind of see. So this was kind of an adventure for me years ago, because I'd always known Laura Flynn Boyle from Wayne's World. Like, I was just like, that's his crazy ex-girlfriend. Which, yeah, character. I think it's a different look now in 2022, but you know, there's still some funny moments with her, and they obviously she's in on the joke. But you watch her in Twin Peaks, where she is just going over dramatic nonstop every scene. And you're like, okay, she's actually got some acting chops. And then you see her in this just go all out comedy. It's like, what whiplash. Around the same time, too. I think that's actually why he cast her, because Mike Myers was a big Twin Peaks fan. They even did like a sketch on SNL around that time where they had Kyle MacLachlan on there doing like a whole bit on it. It's wonderful. Mike Myers is like the crazy backwards talking guy from the Red Room. But it's just funny to see, and I think to go back even to the guy who played Del Preston, who was named Ralph Brown, didn't do a whole lot after Wayne's World. Nothing huge, but
nothing you'd call a career.
Nothing you call it. A couple Joe jobs. It's just interesting though to see some people, and I would think you could even put Christopher Walken potentially to an extent in roles in these movies that really don't fit who they are, and they do such iconic work in this movie. It's just funny. I mean, you could even go as far as saying, like, what has Dana Carvey ever done anything like that? What has Dana Carvey done since then?
Yeah, because I was thinking about how Mike Myers has really kind of stretched out and has done different things. I mean, one of my favorite things is him in Inglourious Bastard.
Yeah.
Just like doing him, but fitting into the movie. And then I started thinking, and I'm not the only person who thought of this, has Dana Carvey ever done like a dramatic role? And is that something he's ever been interested in? And I Googled like Dana Carvey dramatic role, and the first thing that came up was Reddit. And it's literally a person having the same idea, like, why hasn't Dana Carvey done like a dramatic role? And there was a comment, and I tried to click on and find the specific comment, but I could only find this little clip of it. It says, and I think this is someone's pitch, a drum tech who works at a Guitar Center becomes enthralled with his favorite band's drummer, and then he finally like snaps or something like that. And I'm like, I'd watch like Dana Carvey as like an older kind of like play on Garth, where he works at Guitar Center and goes like a little crazy.
Right. No, it actually would be kind of an interesting watch. I guess we can kind of get into coulda, woulda, shoulda here too, because that would have been, I think, an interesting part just to see what would these guys look like if they're older. What would Wayne's World 3 even look like if we got into that? I mean, what would the plot of that? I could almost see like some kind of a what do they call those? Requels? Reboot sequels?
Yeah, it's tough. You can't do the kids because Bill and Ted did that.
Yeah.
And I feel they're kind of similar characters in a sense.
A little bit.
So yeah, it's definitely, we talked about having like, the people doing Twitches and YouTubers. I kind of almost, if it's like them trying to get on a streaming platform or something like that.
That would be an interesting thing. It also would just be fun to see them do like mocking the whole like reboot sequel genre in general, like doing like every trope that we see, like, oh, here they're gonna have their kids pick up, or they're gonna find some like low guy, down in his luck and bring him in, and oh, they're gonna revive Wayne's World as a YouTube show, kind of like we were talking about earlier, right? Like you could see all these threads, and maybe that there is that kind of humor, especially when they're doing like the sponsor scene in the first one, kind of something like that, where they kind of bite at, pop culture right now.
I think this is why they didn't do Wayne's World 3, because like everything I can think of like, so like you said, they have kids or something like that, and they're like guiding them, or like they could try to do a concert in like the day and age where their type of music died out, and wasn't very popular. Maybe they're doing the Bill and Ted thing where they still think they're cool, but they're not. I mean, it's just, it's rough. It's tough to think about, like what a Wayne's World 3 could have been. All I know is that after Wayne's World 2, it would have been off the rails.
Oh yeah.
What if like, cause you mentioned like them trying to put on a concert, what if they did like a play on the Fire Festival, and like you get like the Lonely Island guys involved, I feel.
Yeah, Wayne Stock like 2020.
It's funny. It's funny how you mentioned Firefest, because Wayne Stock was just about Firefest.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
It was fire. These movies were really, I would argue, ahead of their time. Like they did Firefest before Firefest, and it just turns out that Mike Myers had the power to have a super super happy ending where the bands actually showed up, because the first ending was Jim Morrison telling him no, they're not going to show up. So the power of the editing room made that movie end well and avoided Firefest.
Or like maybe like Garth becomes like, they have like a fight and Garth moves to a farm and he dies, and his he actually had like a family, and they move into his farmhouse and they like go under there and they find like his old drumsticks and his guitar, and it ends up they find the recording information. And then they call up Mike Myers or Wayne. They're like, "Hey, we're doing it again."
The Wayne signal.
Call it Wayne's World Afterlife.
They find a board game called Wayne Manji. Garth's drums in the background. You were talking about, so I alluded to this earlier.
Yeah.
You were talking about, perhaps Wayne and Garth were separated or fighting or beefing, if you will.
Yeah.
It turns out that Dana Carvey and Mike Myers did beef
For sure.
for a good period of time. And you were talking about Austin Powers, and that's why. Because of Dana Carvey, Mike Myers essentially, quote unquote, stealing the Dr. Evil character of Lorne from Dana Carvey. And happy to report they made up.
Yep.
The Wayne signal came into play, and they made up. But I didn't realize that they were beefing for quite some time after that.
Yeah, I always wonder about that, because I believe like Mike Myers does seem like, as we've seen based on the story you told us, like he will like rip off stuff or redo things. Even in Wayne's World 2, he takes a joke from Wayne's World 2 and redoes it in Goldmember. The part with Kevin Pollak with the eye, that's just Fred Savage with the mole. It's the same.
We don't
setup.
say I. We don't say I.
Lowercase j.
Lowercase j's.
So, but I also have this. This is one take I will say. It sounded like everyone had a Lorne Michael impression back then. They all kind of sounded like that.
Yeah.
I will say that.
I mean, there's people, I can't remember who did them.
Right.
But then again, Dana Carvey is a person where when you hear someone doing an impression, you're like, oh, he's doing it by way of Dana Carvey.
Yeah, which I think if you listen to Mike Myers, Dr. Evil, it does kind of sound like he's got that Lorne Michaels. And I'm thinking even like Bill Hader's, and Hader has like, I think he's better than Mike Myers and Dana Carvey's version. Like he really catches the Lorne Michaels kind of drawl and like kind of half checked out, but half acts like he's interested in you. Like it's but yeah, it's a fascinating thing. I mean, they actually would make a good plot for Wayne's World 3. Like they have a falling out because like Wayne steals like Garth's idea or something like that, and they have to like come back together.
I mean, Garth was a smart guy. He was building that robot hand or whatever that like came to life as he was talking to Rob Lowe's character. It was just, this is one of those instances where I'm glad they just stopped.
Yeah.
I would love to see them do a movie that isn't Wayne's World or Austin Powers, or even I would love them to do something, and maybe even something that's got a little bit of heart and a little weight to it, maybe play into, the troubles they had. I really love seeing that in movies. A movie I think of is like Funny People. It's a movie that takes Adam Sandler's star power and how we see him, and then like just obliterates us with emotion. Like I would love something like that. Like get Judd Apatow involved or something.
So,
He's an
you're
SNL
asking
guy.
for a Dana Carvey drama is what you're...
More like dramedy, more just comedy with heart,
Like a Vince Vaughn, Owen Wilson duo, or...
Well, that doesn't sound good.
Those
like
were all good.
Like a grumpier old man.
Okay.
Yeah.
I could see it, though. That would be fun.
It would be kind of interesting to see. Yeah, that's a very good comparison. A grumpy old men to Odd Couple. Something else I was thinking about, though, like what are some things, and maybe there isn't anything, if you could have changed anything about the movies, what would you like to have seen different? Maybe 2 is the right way to look at it, too, because we just heard from you, not too long ago. It's like, yeah, they did have to go back to the drawing board because the idea was stolen originally, and then they came up with the Wayne stock idea. But like, would there have been a better plot for 2?
I think there would have been a million better plots for 2, probably. Number 1 definitely had the superior plot. Like it was clearly put together better. I don't want to. Mike Myers and Dana Carvey do such a great job as playing Wayne and Garth, and they're such iconic characters and so forth. But man, I would have loved to have seen more Chris Farley.
Yeah,
like he was in one scene in the first movie, and he plays the security guard, describing Sharp's trajectory of wherever he's going, and when he's pointing to all the different locations, and he points to Detroit or something like that, he does the Chris Farley thing. It's just so funny. It's so subtle, but like he points in one direction and realizes he's pointing in the wrong direction and then moves and points in a different direction. And it was so good. And, the scene in 2 where he does the officer and the gentleman, he's getting, roadie training, getting shot at with tennis balls. They tell him to quit. He tells them, I've got no place else to go. So funny. So iconic.
Very good.
Chris Farley could have really, like if he were one of the like cameramen or something like that, would have just been so funny.
Yeah, like the other guy that wasn't. I'm sorry, his name is escaping me. Fred, you called him out before.
Kurt Fuller.
Yeah, like the other guy that was not him. That guy's fine, but he's not bringing a lot to the table.
Oh no, Kurt Fuller is the guy who works for Rob Lowe. I think we had our lines crossed. The kind of stoogey guy.
Yeah,
that's who I was talking about.
That guy's name is Kurt Fuller. He's like such a character actor and everything.
Yeah, that's the guy who I think is kind of a good MVP. For that.
I was thinking of the guy who told him, "I love you, man." That is Swayze's right hand man in Point Break.
But yeah, I agree. Just putting Chris Farley in one of those kind of like long-haired, like good-looking guy roles would have just added way more comedy. And I feel they were really striking sweet guy Farley in those 2 movies, which I wish we would have just gotten more, because that was always the best note of Farley, was like Tommy Boy. Like, I love when he shows up in Dirty Work, but he's also kind of gross because he's got like the chewed off nose, and I like that too. But he's another guy, you know. Of course, we all want more Farley, but I think he would have put out some good acting, I think, later in life. I think he could have really balanced his humor and his just, like, I don't know, he looks like a lovable guy, and he acts like a lovable guy.
It's just hard. Farley was so talented, and just, you know, not in a bad way, but steals the spotlight. For a movie, you know, that Mike Myers and Dana Carvey did such a great job on their characters. I could see how you need to balance that a little bit. You know, they probably were a little bit like, man, we can't give Farley too many lines here. It's going to turn into a Farley movie. But yeah, it would have, you know, it would have been really funny to have seen the three of them interact even more.
Yeah, no, for sure. Just more Farley. You can never go wrong with him. More Farley. I want that Shrek that would have had Farley's voice the whole way through.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's another example of, like, he would have really sold the sweetness of Shrek a lot better than Mike Myers. I think that's a fine vocal performance Mike Myers does, but Farley, I think, would have done something really special with
Yeah, no, 100%. Something I kind of remembered before, and I wanted to bring up, because you're talking about Dana Carvey's post Wayne's World SNL career. I don't know if you guys ever remember, there was the Dana Carvey show.
Oh, yeah.
And speaking of a lot of coulda, woulda, shouldas, and how this show could have been something probably big, the writing staff on this show was pretty insane. I think it only lasted one season, like 8 episodes total. But I mean, he brought with him a couple guys from SNL, like Smeagol, who helped him create it. Bob Odenkirk was one of the other writers. But his other writers, just a few names that I don't know if anybody recognizes: Steve Carell, Stephen Colbert, Chris McKinney, Louis C.K., Charlie Kaufman, Dino Stamatopoulos. It's just like this murderer's row of comedy writers that all went on and created like their own stuff. I mean, Louis C.K., obviously we don't need to get into what he did.
Well, the real trouble one sounds like you said Smeagol. I would be very afraid to have Smeagol on my writing staff.
Taters.
I feel like we just got incepted.
It likes it raw.
I was pretty bummed. I was watching the credits of Wayne's World 2 when it was about to start, and I saw Brad Whitford. Oh. And I was like, oh, snap. My favorite little snivelly guy, Bradley Whitford, is going to be in this. I guess Brad Whitford is a guitarist in Aerosmith.
Yep. Yep.
Not the same guy, sadly.
Bradley Whitford.
You were about as let down as when Handsome Dan is revealed.
Yep.
Oh, my God.
Harry Shearer.
That's a good scene, too. So here's one for you guys.
It's like shooting fish in a barrel.
For a coulda, woulda, shoulda for you guys, would Bradley Whitford have done better than Christopher Walken in number 2? It's kind of that sniffly, like his character from Billy Madison.
I would have loved to see him like try to show off with the guitar, like.
Yeah.
Walken was good. You know, the thing, Walken was really good. I was most impressed when they do when they do the YMCA scene and they're spying on Bobby and Cassandra at lunch. Mm-hmm. I was actually really impressed at how fast Walken can run.
Yeah.
Oh, he was also a great dancer.
I was like that guy's more athletic. But every time I saw Walken in that movie, it just reminded me of Batman Returns.
Which he's coming right off on that.
Like like instantly, that character just reminded me of the character in Batman Returns.
And connection, Shrek. His name's Max Shrek.
Oh, I'm like,
and then I saw her face.
Now I'm a believer. Without trace.
Dad, no.
More cowbell.
Come on. God. Walken is good, but I do feel like he lacked the kind of energy that Rob Lowe had in the first one. That's kind of where I was getting.
He played a great like asshole producer, though.
Yeah.
And I definitely believe, they do the scene in Wayne's World 2 where they try to get him with a sphincter says what?
Yeah.
And he knows it.
You want me to say it.
And they just crawl away, right? Because they got caught. He plays that character to a T. Where he's calling him off. And actually, while we're talking about that scene, I just want to bring up, I had to like age check The Usual Suspects because they definitely did what Kaiser Sose does at the end of Usual Suspects when they're coming up with Wayne stock. Like they're just like looking around the room, coming up with things to say, right? Like that was totally what they do at the end.
An old man
Usual
carving
Suspects.
wood?
No, Rip Taylor.
I love Rip Taylor.
This might have been pre-Usual Suspects.
It was, and I don't want to go as far to say that all these movies ripped off Wayne's World 2, but they very well could have.
There's probably a number of writers or talented people who watched that movie just because, right? 100%. Yeah, I don't know. I like 2. I do like 2. I just like 1 more. That's where I'm at.
It's funny going back and looking at the reviews. So Siskel and Ebert.
Oh,
big, to date
I've heard of them.
Again. Yeah, it turns out.
Familiar.
Both gave him 3 out of 4 stars.
Both movies.
Both movies.
Okay.
Just said you can't hate Wayne and Garth. But Wayne's World 2 was, if you look at the reviews and the Rotten Tomatoes and so forth, a lot of individuals definitely have it as far more hit or miss. Like if you loved it, you loved it. If you hated it or you didn't like it, you didn't like it.
Yeah.
And I fall into that category with 2, and I don't know if it like why, but I just thought it was fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
Like, everything that they did, even when they're talking about like Calgon, like I don't know why, but that is funny to me. Frampton Comes Alive. They gave that away with free samples of Tide. Like, I mean, just like, I didn't even know what that meant when I was a kid, but I thought it was hilarious.
Obviously, we missed some stuff that, well, I mean, because of our ages, we weren't just old enough to get, right? Or weren't around for. So that actually kind of brings us to the end of our episode, to our segment of power rankings. And Pete, since you're here on your fireball, your heater right here, I want to do top 3 moments from the Wayne's World franchise. So this is sketches or the movies or the reprisal sketches, which we didn't even talk about, that they came back and did a couple.
So do you want me to go from 1 to 3 or 3 to 1?
Your choice.
Yeah, surprises.
Set the tone, and we'll go from there.
Okay. I'm going to go from 1 to 3 because I think number 3 is something that we just haven't talked about yet. Okay, but we have talked about number 1 and number 2. I think as a number 1, this should be obvious. You got to go with the Bohemian Rhapsody scene.
Yeah.
Like, that scene is so iconic. It sets the stage. They're in the Mirthmobile. It's funny that they can somehow fit 5 grown adults into a pacer. And they're headbanging. It's just so iconic. It reminds me a lot of going back to, like, into other pieces of media as they're driving through Illinois, going to the gasworks. It reminds me a lot of the beginning of The Sopranos when they're driving through New Jersey and seeing all the different sights and so forth. It just reminds me a ton of that. Bohemian Rhapsody scene, clear number 1 on my big board.
Yeah.
Okay. Sports reference. Mel Kiper. Okay. Number 2. The Alice Cooper scene was so good.
So good.
So good. Like, Alice Cooper plays that just so well. I remember just jamming to that concert when I was watching that movie.
Yeah.
Like, just being like, this is awesome. He's got like this big like zombie. He's singing about Frankenstein. As a kid, I'm like, this is awesome. And then you get in there, and it's one of those scenes that you really grow to appreciate as you get older. Like, I thought it was funny because they just get down on their knees and start saying, we're not worthy.
Yeah.
For some odd reason. But, like, when you actually listen to him and he starts talking about the history of Milwaukee and just odd note, by the way. How many people come from Chicago? I actually thought this was weird that they went from Illinois to Milwaukee for a concert, where usually most of us do like the opposite.
Right.
We go to Illinois.
Or they were going to Madison.
Or something like that. But the Alice Cooper scene was great.
I just want to say on the Alice Cooper scene, greasy fingers down your greasy spine was a lot for me as a kid.
Yeah.
Watching him sing that. And then I will say, what one has over two, Alice Cooper is super funny. Aerosmith is in Wayne's World 2. I wish Aerosmith was funny.
Yeah. They are just kind of Aerosmith, right?
Steven Tyler getting some moment to do something, would have been good. But that was their second best like movie association. The first being that heater of a song in Armageddon. Oof. So good.
Just serenading while your daughter gets felt up by Ben Affleck with animal crackers.
Yeah.
Great song. Number 3 scene. We haven't talked about this.
Okay.
So in Wayne's World 2, they grow up and they move out of their house and they move into a doll factory.
Yeah.
Where we learn a little bit more about Garth growing up. A little too much detail probably that Wayne let us know. And they do the scene where they go down the pole and so forth. But when they're actually on the show, they're in a old doll factory. Mm-hmm. And as a kid, watching Wayne scare the shit out of Garth by doing the leprechaun is so funny. Garth, I'm the leprechaun. No, got to get away. Where are you going to go? Where are you going to get away to? You going to go to Ireland?
That's the best when he does the, are you going to go to Ireland?
It's just like, that was one of those, you were talking about like how it's a collection of sketches, right?
Yeah.
Like that's one of those, like you could just tell they were like, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
And that scene, short, but man, it was good.
Yeah, it was. I love everything that was actually the Wayne's World show in the movies. As much as there is not a lot of it, you were right. Like there's not, but even like the parts. I mean, I'll get to my moments
suck
too.
cut.
Yes.
Yeah, but it sucks and it cuts.
It certainly does suck.
That's a good pick, though. I did
that.
enjoy that bit. I thought you were going to do the pubes. You didn't tell about my pubes.
I alluded to it. I didn't want to say the word pube on a podcast, but there I go, right there.
You're fine.
We prefer you to say it.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, pubes. The swing. The honorable mention when they bring in Charlton Heston.
Yeah.
Like,
My God.
we I know we're low budget, but we can do a little better here, right? Like, I mean, like, and then you come out with Charlton Heston. And then also, to date myself again, one of my other favorite movies was Terminator 2.
Yeah.
And the appearance of the T-1000 and have you seen this boy is so funny.
Yeah.
And I completely forgot that movie came out before Wayne's World in 92.
Yep.
So we were talking about my parents letting me watch movies like way too early. I definitely saw Terminator 2 before I saw Wayne's World.
Oh, I'm pretty sure I might have. It might have been around the same time, but it was also way too early. Yeah. That and Animal House.
But so good. So good. So important to my youth.
Those are good
my
moments,
life.
though.
Thanks,
And
parents.
I appreciate the bonus moments, too.
Yeah.
Because the Charlton Heston, Gordon Street. Yes. Gordon Street.
But, so Rhapsody, Cooper, Leprechaun.
It's a good list.
Good. Fred, what do you got?
I got like a few sporadic things and someone we didn't touch on at all, Brian Doyle Murphy. Is that the right Murphy?
Yeah.
Come bust a move where the games are played. It's cool. It's hip. It's Noah's Arcade. He does the little arm cuts. I love that. And it's like the same moment. I'm going to like count them as two things though, is I have it written Rob Lowe's read of Gelatinous Cube Eats Village. It's terrific. I know nothing about video games. I found it riveting. Like, that's where I'm like, give him an Oscar for like being in Wayne's World. And then it's Ed O'Neill. Like, I'm gonna just combine them all as one thing.
Yeah. I know you like to do like to tear his heart from his. They're still beating heart from his chest. Show it to him. So
I'll do an honorable mention, something that's small, but like I was cooking in the kitchen while watching too before I got here, and I like did a little like while I was like cutting up something. Was there's the running joke of the Sports Illustrated magazine, and it comes back during the fight with him and James Hong.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm sorry. Oh, yes, he did receive that. And I was just literally like, ha, good.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's good. James Hong was another great cameo.
Still kicking. Still out there.
And he's still doing good work out there, too.
I want to Brian Doyle Murphy really quick. His character Noah Vanderhoff is almost exactly the same as the CEO in Christmas Vacation.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Like
Very similar.
Like he just plays that role to a T. The other thing that I found really funny about that scene is he talks about how he does his own commercials and how he never mentions the video games because it changes so fast or something like that. At the beginning of Wayne's World 2, it's a Noah Vanderhoff commercial on Noah's Arcade, which, catchy name. His wife came up with it.
Yeah.
Just amazing. He's really
I just
lucky.
thought of it one day, and that's what
And there it was.
You were so creative.
Yeah. He's naming off video games.
Oh.
Like he's actually contradicting himself in that first thing. I caught that this last time.
He had to be
just
hip because Wayne embarrassed him. That's good. I did not pick up on that. That's a really good pull. I think that joke that pays off. But yeah, the the Sports Illustrated phone. Yes, he received that.
And the Stanley Cup, 100 Years of Glory. And the Sports Illustrated swimsuit edition.
And that one too, of course.
Oh my God.
Good picks. I like those moments too. I mean, it's hard to pick. It's really hard to narrow 3 down. I'll put it that way. If I put 3, I'm like, oh, maybe we'll have 3 pretty unanimous. But I mean, you guys are right across the board right now. Because I mean, I would probably Bohemian Rhapsody has to be number 1. I think for me as well. But then number 2. This moment always kills me, and I think because it kind of reminds me of Dude, Where's My Car? But when they go to the drive-thru in number 2 at Makita's Donuts, and he's trying to, because I think I actually tried this bit in real life, and it just did not hit at all. But where they're like pretending the mic's out, and it's like, I will get a Ellie donut and coffee, and the guy repeats the order back to him, and their faces just sink. It always like makes me laugh just because it's so dumb, but I don't know. It's just great to see them always like doing jokes on other people, and they're finally like, oh fuck, we got egg on our face after that one. Yeah, I mean, Ed O'Neill's a great one, but I think the third bit, you already called it out, with the nut bar, but him, like Del, kind of explaining the concert and then randomly just pulling the turrets out. He's like, you are stage left and you are stage right. Turret A will be here. These babies can eat.
That's very much a Tom joke right there, Phil.
It's just always like, because you don't expect it to hit, and it just catches you off guard.
There's a couple action like comedy references, right? Like in the first movie when they just open the door in Makita's Donuts, and there's like, I've always just wanted to open a door, and there's a bunch of guys and they're training like James Bond.
That feels very much of a Mike Myers thing. Like,
is.
I'm going to make a whole movie of this.
Or he just kind of puts in scenes that it's like he just wants to put those in just so he can make them hit, right?
Yeah. One that we both all should have said, which I completely forgot, which was going to be my top 3. Garth has like 6 great jokes in Rob Lowe's apartment. That whole thing where he's just going to the apartment and he picks up the notebook and it's like, find a public access channel and exploit it. Ooh, sucks for those guys or whatever. And then he finds the condoms.
Rib for her pleasure. Ew.
I once tried to get a shirt from a rib place when I was little that said ribs for her pleasure. And my mom was going to buy it. And my brother called me out. He was like, no, why he wants that shirt, right?
Oh, no.
I was like, come on, man. I mean, in retrospect, I'm kind of glad I didn't walk around with a shirt that says ribs for her pleasure. But when I was 13, I was like, yeah, I want that.
Pretty sure a local barbecue place has that shirt.
Ooh.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Could all come out with those T-shirts by the next episode.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
We'll push those on our podcast next show.
Pete wants
Ribs
to talk
for
meat.
her pleasure.
Yeah. Next podcast, meat.
Yeah, meat. We're just gonna do good meat.
Meat. It's what's for dinner.
We have to have a special guest for that.
Special guest, yeah.
Special meat guest.
Think of somebody for that, but
Special guest, prime rib.
I want to take you guys to the land of lean beef.
that would be great. Speaking of special guests, though, Pete, thank you for coming out again this week to talk to us about Wayne's World. Anything that you want to push? Anything plug for yourself?
Other than my SoundCloud?
Yeah, do you have a SoundCloud?
No, I don't.
That's really sad. I was hoping for a moment.
Yeah, no, nothing to push. But it's been 10 years in the making since our reunion on the pod.
Yeah, you can look up Drunken Sailors podcast. I doubt it's anywhere hosted right now because I didn't continue that hosting after 2011. But yeah,
I'll come on here and make unbelievable NFL picks.
Maybe one day,
just like we did.
Sounds good.
We'll have you back for that one.
It was a lot of fun. I mean, Wayne's World just kills. I think
great.
that's just the bottom line here is that those two movies, so iconic, so important. Really, I think you can make the argument they changed media.
Yeah.
For what it is. We talked about connections to Usual Suspects and all this stuff. And I'm just going to go with everyone just copied Wayne's World. So, really always happy to talk about that. And thanks for having me.
Absolutely. No, it's great to have you here. Fred, anything that you want to plug before we wrap up here?
My SoundCloud?
Yeah, Pete SoundCloud, whatever it is, Little Wing or whatever he's called on there.
Prime Rib.
Prime Rib. I guess just check out the Interchange Theater website in Milwaukee. I'll be in shows pretty regularly. Soon I will actually give exact dates on shows once we get a little more in the clear with having more live shows.
Yeah, I think we're getting back, but not all the way there. But yeah, interchangetheater.com. And one last thing I'll plug here is just to, if you're enjoying what you're listening to out there, please visit buymeacoffee.com/SOTF. Any and all donations are certainly welcome. We'll be putting all money that is donated to us back into the show. And I really appreciate everybody so far who has donated. It's helping out, gives us better equipment, gives us better studio space. We were talking about we could use some mic stands. So we'll be definitely looking forward to that. That's buymeacoffee.com/SOTF. And stay tuned for next time. We'll be doing Jean-Claude Van Damme. The muscles from Brussels.
I don't know why I did a whip.
I don't know why I did a whip either. I feel like we did the most non-representational thing of Jean-Claude.
That was not the sound of a whip. It was the sound of a split.
That was the sound of, just...
And by that episode, we are going to be split ready, right? We're both going to be able to do a full split.
Yeah. Going to go down and kick Bison's butt. Yeah, that was a little more on, but I think I got the quote wrong. He's already face-palming. We need to wrap this up. Thanks for listening to State of the Franchise. We'll see you next time. Party on, Fred.
Party on, Tom.